everyone. I'm Chrissy Zappella. I'm the Blanton Fellow of European Painting and Sculpture at the Blanton Museum of Art at the University of Texas at Austin. And I'm joined today for today's curated conversation in the company of cats and dogs by my favorite little furry co-host, Isabella Donatella Zappella. You can call her Ella. She was adopted about a year ago on July 4th. She's a Yankee Doodle from Wrightwood Rescue outside of Chicago. And she's my very best friend in the whole wide world. And I think Stacy's gonna show us some photos of her. So right outside of Chicago, she was adopted. And you can see that on the right, bottom right. Ella is actually standing at the University of Chicago with her little red shoes on, right at the spot where Harry met Sally, or just about there. And on the left, she's down at Dawson, the Dawson School in South Austin, a little bit bigger. And at the top right, when she was a little baby, I used to have to carry her around in a baby carrier because she couldn't put her little paws on the ground without her vaccinations. And it just so happened that someone saw us and did the sketch and texted it to a student in one of my classes and said, "This is the coolest dog I've ever seen." And I couldn't agree more. Almost as cool as my other co-host, my colleague at the Blanton, Christian Wurst.
Hi, Chrissy. Hi, everyone. My name is Christian Wurst. I'm the curatorial assistant to the deputy director for curatorial affairs. And I'd like to introduce you all to Jezebel. Jezebel is 18 years old. Yes, 18. She's legal. She was adopted when she was only a few months old. She's a very vocal cat, as you can see from the picture on the left. She's also not the friendliest cat, actually, but she's been a great companion to me for several years. In fact, last year, she started to sit on my lap, which was a major step in our relationship. And I'm really happy to sort of introduce you all to her. So if Stacey wouldn't mind going to the next slide, we can sort of start our presentation.
Christian, I'm just going to interrupt 1 second and say
sure.
a little bit of housekeeping to do just before that. So those of you who have joined us before, and Ella is gone, she's decided that there's more interesting things in other parts of the house. But before we start, I just want to remind everyone, your audio is muted. We can't see you. You can see us. So don't worry if you have to shout or if your furry friend, your furry co-host decides to bark or meow, we won't be able to hear it. And we take your questions, which we will do at the end today, from the Q&A window. So we hope that you will participate in the chat. Send us your notes there, say hi to each other there, introduce your furry friends there. But when you have questions for us, please put them in the Q&A box, because as the chat moves up, we'll otherwise lose track of your questions, and we don't want to do that. The other thing is that because it's happy hour, we hope that you fixed your favorite drink. I have a Negroni. Ella is not drinking age. She's only 1, so she's not drinking except for her water bowl, which is right at my feet. And I think with that, now it's time to get started.
So this curated conversation was inspired by our exhibition in the Company of Cats and Dogs from 2014, which was curated by Francesca Consagra. It explored a unique relationships humans have with these animals that we see through art history. They were domesticated thousands of years ago, so it makes sense that they've appeared in art just as long as they've been domesticated. You know, that sort of same compulsion to photograph your pet and share it on Instagram can really be traced back to ancient Egypt, to China, or to even pre-Columbian Mexico. So we'll be discussing several themes from the show and also feature some works that were included. At the end, we'll be talking with Colleen Ketchum from Austin Pets Alive and answering some of your questions. So let's get started. First up is one of my favorites, Cat in Poppy Field from 1968. It's a lithograph by German artist Otto Dix. Dix served in World War I and would later be known for his unflinching depictions of German society during the Weimar Republic. Even though his art was also considered degenerate by the Nazi regime, he remained in Germany through the war. And by the 60s, by the time he made this print, Dix had suffered a stroke, which made him unable to use his left arm. So that print revisits paintings that he made in the late 40s and early 50s of his family's cat. You can really tell with the picture on the left that it's sort of a direct influence, and you can see that it's more or less the same cat. So if we go back to the original image, what I really love about these pictures are the vibrant colors and all the subtle markings and outlines around the cat and poppies. And for those who don't know what a 5-color lithograph is, it means that each color had to be drawn on a separate lithographic stone before they were inked and pressed onto the paper. And then Christy's now gonna talk to you about one of her favorites.
Yeah, I'm so excited to show you all this really beautiful study of a greyhound. So this is by the artist Sinibaldo Scorza. And Sinibaldo Scorza lives at the end of the 1500s and the beginning of the 1600s. And he was an Italian Baroque artist known mostly for his paintings and drawings of animals. So for those of you who are here for the main event, the horse curated conversation, you heard me talk about this painting by Sinibaldo Scorza. Stacy, can you please advance? And that is Orpheus charming the animals. So Sinibaldo Scorza was famous for these kinds of paintings that included different animals. And as a result, like other Italian artists of the period, he studied these animals from real life. Stacy, can we clear that off for a sec? So here we have, if you just advance forward, it'll go away. Thank you. That's Stacy Hoyt, everyone. She organizes all of these wonderful events for us, and you'll hear us talking to her, and she's really there. She's not our imaginary friend. So this is an Italian greyhound, and it is a drawing from the Suida Manning collection. And the Italian greyhound gets to be only about 11 pounds. So if you picture a regular greyhound, just shrink it a little. And they're really beautiful animals. And one of the things I wanted to tell you is that they're so synonymous with Italian art. We see them in Italian art all of the time. When there's a dog, it's often an Italian greyhound. And actually, this drawing, as I mentioned, comes from the Suida Manning collection. It just so happens that one of the great descendants of the Suida Manning family is this puppy, this Italian greyhound, Agip, Suida Manning Dolnier, who is actually, I will call Agip an heiress, a Suida Manning heiress. And she's a beautiful Italian greyhound belonging to the members of the Suida Manning family, and I wanted to show her to you with her beautiful big eyes. Stacy, can you advance the slide, please? Thank you. I also wanted to show you this. This is one of my favorite prints in the collection. I think it's hysterical, not least of because Ella wanted to make sure y'all saw this because she came in from the yard the other day covered in fleas. So we're dealing with that right now. And it definitely made me think of this, this lithograph by Alfred Bendinger, who was an American artist born and raised in Philadelphia, most known as an architect, but he did do a lot of caricatures as well. And here's one of people and a dog on the beach at a vacation being attacked by flying insects that appear to be biting them, and they're trying to itch so much. They're so itchy that you see all these extra arms and legs coming out of all of them. And I thought it was funny because that's how I feel every time I think of Ella having fleas. So.
So this may not be the best reproduction of the work, but this is William Wegman's Antarctica from his Dusted series. And we couldn't not mention the work of William Wegman. He's best known for highly staged photographs of his Weimaraner dogs. This work in particular was done using a large format Polaroid camera, which he began using in 1979. And in the next slide, you can see a picture of that camera, the size of it, along with a picture of Wegman using it in 1990. It's sort of off to the side on the left. And he's using it for one of his photo shoots with his dogs. You know, I really wish that I could pose Jezebel like that, but she's just not built to really take direction. So if we go back to the photograph, it's one of the last he took of his dying dog, Man Ray, who had been diagnosed with cancer. Usually his photographs are sort of more whimsical and his dogs are sort of dressed up or sort of placed on podiums. This photograph showing Man Ray sort of alone, covered with white flour, just like the title suggests, it sort of evokes the sensation of cold and isolation. Sadly, after Man Ray died, Wegman didn't photograph another Weimaraner for 5 years. And if you want to go to the next work, this is Morrison Hartley's Untitled Girl with Kitten. This is actually one of my favorite works in our collection. I love Morrison Hartley's work. And this one has so many unanswered questions, like who is this woman? Is it her cat? You know, so before we put it up in our galleries, a couple years ago, I did a bit of research and had determined that we needed to change the title. Originally, we had it titled as Girl with Kitten, but the painting was actually found in his studio after his death, and it wasn't titled. So here, there's a photograph that was taken shortly after his death of his studio in Korea, Maine. It's on the second floor of an abandoned church. And then, so you sort of see the painting in the middle there. And it might be fair to say that the painting might have not been complete. I mean, there's no title, there's no signature from the artist. The only way we know it's a Hartley is because it's literally there in his studio. And then if you want to go into the next slide. So in my research, I came across 2 sketches that relate to the painting, which were donated by Hartley's niece to the Bates Museum of Art in 1955. And then, so you can sort of tell where these sketches are also not really dated or titled, but they sort of all came together in one big clump to the collection. So we go back to the quote unquote finished painting. Though the figure is unknown, it's an intimate setting and sort of suggests someone familiar to the artist. This enigmatic sitter sort of wears a see-through robe, and there's a calico cat that sort of rests on her lap. Hartley does away with the sort of large armchair that are seen in the preliminary sketches, preferring to foreground the figure and the still life on the side in this sort of sea of dark blue. So we can only assume this is the finished work, but we really don't know.
I think that's really beautiful, Christian. Thanks for showing it to us. Another work I love that features cats. I just love this work. This is a color lithograph. We're showing a lot of lithographs today by the artist Leonore Feeney. I'm really excited to highlight her because she is truly one of my favorite artists of all time. So here we see this pack of 7 cats of different colors, all seated in a clump. And I love the way there's the blue on top, the tan color on the bottom, and they are just situated in this cluster in the middle. And it looks very cute until you start to notice, you know, these cats all, it's very still. They have these yellow eyes that really stick out. They draw your attention, and their expressions seem very still, as if they're watching something. So I want to talk a little about Leonore Feeney. Stacy, can we show her her image? Thank you. This is a portrait, a photograph taken of Leonore Feeney in 1951 as a Persian cat. So what I want to tell you about Leonore Feeney is that she was born in Argentina to Italian parents. And then she moved to Italy, where she was raised primarily by her mother. And in her early teens, she had an eye disease, and she had to have her eyes covered for a very long time. And when she took these bandages off of her eyes, she had never had an art background. She was never trained, but being in Italy, she'd seen lots of art and was influenced by the old masters, the kinds of artists that you'll see if you visit the European painting collection. And she decided that she wanted to create art that allowed her to express these visions that she had had in her mind while her eyes were covered. So in her teenage years, she starts making art. And so in 1951, again, here we see her on the left, she visited Egypt where she saw the Sphinx in real life. And cats were a major theme for Leonora Feeney from her earliest childhood memories to the time that she died, supposedly. She was a queer artist, but she supposedly died in bed with men on either side of her under a blanket of Persian cats. I don't know if that's true, but it's certainly a great story. And throughout her life, she painted images of women with cats. She thought that the cat and women were intrinsically linked to each other throughout history, and depicting women as cats and cats as women, and these hybrid creatures, these sphinx creatures, that she could get at something about the female experience, about the solitude of it, the rebelliousness of it, the sort of uncanny aspect of it. And if you go ahead one more slide, please, Stacy. Someone's just commenting the princess's face resembles a cat. I agree. I think that that cat and that woman are definitely meant to be identified with each other. And I wanted to show you this identification of the cat and the woman. So on the left, again, we see Leonora Feeney, and this time she is holding a black cat between her legs in a very suggestive way, that I think is meant to provoke some associations with some slang that we might have for cats and the women's body. And I also, this made me think very much of the way that we identify women with cats in society. And of course, the most iconic woman to do that in the 20th century is the great American actress, Eartha Kitt. And there she is driving as Catwoman. She's always foiling Batman, but in a very lusty way. And there she is with her cat. Now, Leonora Feeney, oh, can we go back a little? Sorry, one more. Leonora Feeney said something about cats. She said, I like cats because I find them calming and harmonious. And I know exactly what type of person likes cats and what type of person does not. Are you ready for this, Christian? Yeah. She said, generally, loners and rebels, those who are in some sort of solitary situation, are those who like cats. Cats have always been linked to women, to femininity. That has to do with religion. Cats were seen as an extended concept of sin. And I think she's right. Can we move forward, Stacy? This is a set of prints from our collection from the History of Appearance of Man. And they are showing us the beginning of the world according to the biblical tradition in the book of Genesis. So on the left, we have an image of Adam under a tree, and he is naming the animals, which is one of the first things that according to the tradition, Adam did. And in the Christian tradition, the right side is always the favored side. And if you look at Adam's right side, which is our left, he has a few kinds of animals. He has the oxen that's going to help him in agriculture, but right beneath that oxen, he has, you'll see, a dog, the Italian Greyhound. There it is again. And suggesting to us that from the beginning of time, man and dog were associated. And I'm sorry, I was just saying that you guys love Leonora Feeney. Me too. I'm really psyched that you do. But from the beginning of time, man and dog are associated. Remember that dog is going to become man's best friend. Whereas if we look at Eve on the right, so at the very moment we see that forbidden fruit in her hand, she's reaching it over. The snake is there up in the tree goading her on to do it. She's about to cause the fall of man, and who is at her feet as an extended concept of sin on her right side? That is a cat. So from the very beginning, man and dog are associated and woman and cat are associated. One of the other things I think is really interesting is that there was just a really great book written about Renaissance images of people seen from behind. And one of the major takeaways is that the image of a person seen from behind is always about sexual lasciviousness. And a turkey, there's a reason for that. Turkey were New World birds. They came over from America to Europe, and so putting them in European images was really a thing at the time that showed knowledge of the New World. The New World, which was not new at all, by the way. So there we have Eve seen from behind in the sexually lascivious pose with a cat at her feet, suggesting this sexual lasciviousness. So why are man and dog associated? Can we move forward one, please, Stacy? Oh, I wanted to show you guys this. This is a illuminated manuscript from the 15th century, and I thought Eve, with her misbehaving cat, would be absolutely into this, because what we see here is that the monk, or whoever who has been writing this manuscript, has been interrupted by his cat, who has walked through the ink and walked across the illuminated manuscript. And those of you who are trying to work from home right now know what that feels like, I am sure, because I do. Can we move forward one, Stacy, please? So right from the beginning, man and dog are associated. And we also say that people start to look like their pets, right? So I love these two paintings from the collection that show men with their dogs and they look like each other. And so dogs are loyal, they're social, they are descended from wolves, but they're tamed. So there's always this inner wildness that is being kept under control. They are smart, they are trainable, they hunt together, they're social animals, and they hunt in packs, they work together. So there are all of these ideas about animals working together, cooperating, still a little wild, but understanding the need to work together in civilizations for the betterment of their species. So here we see on the left a painting, a very large painting, I'll point out, by David Bates. It's called The Whittler. So we see a man sitting on his porch and he is whittling, which is carving wood, and you see that in his hand. And right under his right foot on our left side is his dog. And I love to look at the face of the man and dog because they're very similar. They have these very pronounced eyes, the long nose, and then the smiling mouth and the long face. I think there's definitely an attempt here to identify the man and the dog. One of the things you should know about David Bates is he is a Texas artist. He lives in Dallas, and he has been called the most successful Dallas artist ever. He actively decided not to go to New York City. He shunned the New York art scene and stayed in Dallas. And he depicts what he sees. He finds inspiration from Texan life especially, but other parts of the American South. And his style in general is characterized by these thick lines and bold use of colors. And he's really trying to get at an American style. He talks about American art of his youth and how it used to be bold and pop. And that's what he's trying to get at, an American style, sort of independent from European influence. I'm getting the dogs are not descendants of wolves. That is absolutely correct. You'll have to look at the genealogy of this, but it's very interesting how dogs and wolves are connected. And I don't want to spend too much time on this, and maybe we can talk about it at the end. On the right, however, we see other 6-color lithograph, like Christian explains, and I just adore this work. This is by the artist Gilbert Lujan, who was born in California, a Chicano artist who was part of the Chicano art collective Los Four. For the millennials and Gen Xers in the group, you'll know Los Four probably because Beto de la Rocha was one of the members, and he is the father of the lead singer and vocalist of Zach de la Rocha of Rage Against the Machine. So that is the collective that Gilbert Lujan was in. And here we see one of his images of him. It's a self-portrait with what he called his familiar, and that is El Mingo. El Mingo, I've talked to my sister about this, who has a degree in Spanish literature, and she assures me that poner El Mingo means to stand out. And I think that this dog and Fireboy definitely stand out in these vivid colors. You see the hair aflame, and Lujan called this anthropomorphic creature, this dog creature, who again looks very similar to him, with the same coloring, the smile, they're posed together. It looks, I mean, this is great. And they, a familiar is a supernatural animal that helps one do magic. And this all belonged to what Lujan called Magulandia. So his nickname was Magu. And this land that he created was a sort of reinterpreted LA inhabited by these anthropomorphized creatures especially coming out of Aztec mythologies. And by creating an alternate mythology, he really raised the degree of seriousness with which Chicano art was taken. And so a very important artist. And we're really lucky to have this beautiful litho in our collection. Can we move forward one? I want to show this image, which I thought was very important to show, because it shows that the way in which this idea of people coming to look like they're animals can be used for more insidious content. So in the past, it was used we saw in those other images in a very uplifting, happy way. And I think the original intent of this lithograph by Paul Gavarni, which is it's a nom de plume or nom d'art of a French artist. He shows us the dangerous effects of Oriental noodles. So there are some real problematics right away. We know that the term Oriental is a loaded term that has to do with colonialism and othering people who were not European. And it shows, if you look just above, this very Humpty Dumpty like figure who is with his dog, who himself is quite corpulent. In that very old mastery frame, you see a very thin man and his very thin, beautiful dog. And so this is contrasted as a sort of ancestral before and after. So it's saying that these noodles that are coming from the Orient, which is again a loaded and very extremely problematic term, transforms this European man from this thin version of himself into this more obese version. That is making fun of that is finding humor both in ethnic stereotypes and in body shaming, which is unfortunate, but a part of history. And at the bottom, it refers to his delicate constitution. So I think there's a part of this that is also making fun of the man himself, because certainly his constitution is not very delicate. So it's very ironic.
Chris, I had a question. Given its problematic subject matter, how would we recontextualize it for a museum audience today? If we were
that's really interesting. I think, we're doing it right now, right? Like, so we're talking about the problematics of these kinds of images where in the past we might not have. And I think it's really important that we do that. I don't know that I'm necessarily prepared to speak about this specific image in a specific context, because of course, as you know, Christian, it will depend on the context of the show. But what I can say is, for those of you who have tuned in either on Curated Conversations or in the gallery for my talks about Old Masters, Modern World, I am very much of the conviction that these kinds of images that appear to us as racist, homophobic, biased in some way, ableist, ageist, I'm very much of the idea that we should not be erasing these images or hiding these images. If anything, we should be looking at them very, very critically to try to understand where these structures of power come from. Because when we look at the past, it helps us understand how we got to where we are right now. So I think it's critical to look at these kinds of images and to come to understand the contemporary world. And if we don't do that, we're missing a huge piece of history. Is that satisfactory?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Christian. I appreciate that's a great question, and it's so relevant to what I do, certainly, and hopefully to all of us. Stacy, can we move forward one, please? Thanks. I love this. I think you guys are going to love the story of this painting on the left, Wild Duck Shoot, or On the Wing. William R. Ranney. William R. Ranney was born in Connecticut in the early 1800s. He died, I want to double check that, because actually I think I'm confusing. Yep, he died fairly young in 1857, so he only lived to be 44. But in that time, he had an extraordinary life. So one thing I want you to know right away of this painting on the left is that despite its great technical ability, this artist was completely self-taught. He was born in Connecticut, taught himself how to paint, and get this is what's super interesting. Right when he was about to go to art school, the Alamo fell. So even though he was all the way in New York at this time, he was very moved by the fall of the Alamo. And so came to Texas, here in Texas, where he fought in the war and was part of the Battle of San Jacinto, where Santa Anna, the president of Mexico, was captured. And he was part of the guard, according to legend, he was part of the guard that guarded the Mexican president. He then went back after leaving the war, the Texas War of Independence, and went back to New Jersey, where I'm from. Specifically, he went to Weehawken, New Jersey, which is right by where I grew up. It's right next to it. It's like you can throw a rock. In Weehawken, he became the first important artist in New Jersey. So this Jersey girl is very proud to have William R. Ranney, his beautiful paintings, be part of our story, even though, you know, things are complicated. On the right, we have this beautiful etching that shows the hunt again. So men and dogs are often associated because dogs are so bred for hunting, so useful in hunting. And this is an activity that starts with necessity and then becomes a leisure activity. And on the right, we see a boy with his two dogs. And this is by John Frederick Taylor. It's a tiny little etching. Beautiful, very moving. And this etching in particular, this little boy with his two gorgeous dogs, made me think of my very favorite childhood book about, well, we're back now, guys. And the book I was thinking of was Where the Red Fern Grows. I don't know how many of you all read that when you were little, but I remember very specifically it being in my 6th grade reader, and I just loved that book. And I recommend it highly for those of you looking for summer reading. It's a little sad, but it's beautiful. It's so sad. It is so sad. I should, no spoilers in the chat, please. But I wanted to emphasize that this idea of a boy and his dog is really related to this identification that comes between man and dog. And so we see that again here with Timmy and Lassie. I want to move forward just a little bit. Stacy, can you move one forward? So over and over, we see dogs and men being associated and women and cats being associated. So here is a drawing, a lithograph by Théophile Alexandre Steinlen, The Women of France. And the women are shown in the background, where actually what comes into focus is this cat in the right-hand corner, as if standing in primarily for a woman of France. Now, you all will know Steinlen's work because Steinlen is the artist of the Tournée du Chat Noir, this very famous poster that again features a black cat this time. This is an advertisement for a nightclub, and the implication, I think, is that a nightclub is the kind of environment in which the behaviors that black cats might be interested in happen. So we see again this implication that women are like cats. And then that black cats specifically are a little illicit. And can we move forward one more, Stacy? Thank you. I want to end on this one because it's strange. This is called the Injured Countess. And so the count in question is above. We see this very bizarre image of a woman with cats, and she is suckling the cats. Now what's going on is above her head is her husband, and he is the count, and he is saying to the count, "My lady, it's time to come to bed." And to her right is a little boy crying, and this little boy is saying, "If only I were a cat, then my mom would love me," because this woman, this countess, had expressed in her letters, get this, that not only did she not love her son, that she preferred her cats, and that she knew too well one of her servants. And if you'll look in the top right-hand corner, you see a man looking, kind of peering in. And I wonder if that might not be the servant that she knows too well, that her husband is saying, "Come to bed," but she's not going to do that. She's going to stay and she's going to carouse and drink with these, quote, lower class people. And to emphasize her depravity, what we see is her suckling these kittens, a tiger striped kitten and a calico kitten that supposedly she loved more than her own child. And I think that this really underscores this relationship between women and evil, women and bad behavior in cats, and reminds us of men and the more masculine dog, the connection between the dog. And I think that's really interesting because, and I'll just end with this, while we associate men with dog and women with cats, there was just a really interesting study, the results of which came out in the last few days, that said that today, men on dating apps who show pictures with cats are perceived as less masculine, more neurotic, and less dateable than men who have no pictures of animals, and far less than men who are pictured with dogs. And I think that this is the result of this association that's been made for centuries over centuries in the history of art, associating women with cats and men with dogs. But I think, Christian, you wanted to add something to this.
Yeah, well, obviously I don't agree with that assessment, but
of course not.
To the next slide. Picking up from what Chrissy is saying about cats being associated with immoral women, I think we can start to see how this also led to the connection between witches and cats. In folklore, witches' demonic attendants, also called familiars, often took a feline form. There are several theories about why there is this supernatural link. Part of it has to do with cats just being nocturnal. They're aloof. The demonic look of their eyes. In fact, back in the 13th century, Pope Gregory IX put out the Vox in Rama as a warning against the perils of witchcraft, and stating that the black cat was actually Lucifer in disguise. So for centuries, witches and cats have been linked like this. Here you sort of see a print by Claire Leighton titled The Village Witch, and you can sort of see a cat curled up near her leg. If we want to go to the next slide, there's another great example in our collection that comes from Francisco Goya's Caprichos series. Unlike his more documentary series on the disasters of war a few years later, these works are more allegorical and a commentary on Spanish society when it came to and superstitions and the ignorance of ruling class. The series, composed of 80 prints, became more and more fantastical and starts to feature demons and donkey hybrids, witches and monsters. The work on the left, titled Where is Mother Going, is from our collection. And here you sort of see an owl carrying a witch with her grotesque sons as a cat hangs from a parasol. Now, obviously, this is a very comical image, but it relates to the work on the right, which is in the Metz collection, and follows our prints in the series. And you sort of see a witch and a devil and a cat riding a broom. So there are several images of witches and brooms and cats sort of in this series. Now, if you want to go to the next slide, please. So here we're sort of going to the extreme opposite. So you can probably call this painting the polar opposite of the witch imagery. This work depicts the Annunciation by the workshop of Paolo Veronese. And in the center, you see a small, sort of elegant toy spaniel sort of plopped onto this scene for no reason. This dog symbolizes fidelity and wealth, and was frequently depicted alongside portraits of aristocratic women or figures like the Virgin Mary, especially in France, Italy, and Spain from the 16th century through the 18th century. And then in the next slide, Here's another one from the 18th century by the Italian artist Marco Renfial. Obviously, it was very important for the sitter to include her pets. It sort of showed that she can afford to take care of this small, useless dog.
Yeah, Christian, I wanted to jump in and say that it's really interesting to me, and I'm sure that some of our viewers and listeners at home are saying, oh, but I thought cats and dogs, or cats and women were associated, but here are two images of women with dogs. And I think that's a really good question. There's a reason for that. The reason being that in these two images, they're trying to emphasize these women's excellent qualities. So their fidelity, their loyalty, their chastity, their willingness to participate in social situations. And for those reasons, they are pictured, instead of with cats, they are with dogs.
Yeah, exactly. So if we want to jump another century into the next slide, this is a poster by Toulouse-Lautrec titled L'Artisan Moderne, and features another toy dog in the center. By this time, the small dog was used satirically as a symbol of excess and status. This is a poster advertising the designer Andre Marti and his sort of decorative wares. You see sort of this upper class woman in bed with her dog, while the artisan sort of making a house call in the vein of a doctor's visit. And then if we move to the next image, so another popular breed of dog among upper class, which you've already mentioned, is the Greyhound. You can see in this mezzotint, after a painting of James Stewart, Duke of Lennox in Richmond, much like the Italian Greyhound, the English valued greyhounds so highly that in the 11th century, there were laws equating killing a greyhound with homicide. And by 1617, greyhound ownership was only legal for wealthy landowners and persons of higher degree. And they were mainly used also for hunting. So when used for hunting, greyhounds were normally released at the end, since they lacked stamina, but were highly valued for their speed and ability to take down game. So if we want to go to the next slide, we can then sort of see the other side of the socioeconomic spectrum, where we have mutts and stray dogs. In this print by Ludovic Leppic titled For the Poor, it depicts sort of this unquestionably cute small dog with a placard that reads in French, quote, "Give to those who pray and ask, because the angel at eternity's doorstep hears but one word that opens the way, charity." With its sort of direct gaze and sympathetic appearance, Leppic's dog forces us to acknowledge it, to show compassion, and to remember the less fortunate. So in the next slide, another example would be this print by Felix Goult titled Winter in Paris. The artist portrays the extraordinarily harsh winter of 1879 and its effects on Parisians of different classes. If you look at the main image, the biggest image, on the left, you can see this woman and her child sort of clad in fur with their toy dog sort of right behind them. Well, it compares this sort of delicate, tiny dog with a pack of strays looking for food in the foreground. The print was done a year after 24 Parisians died of rabies, and it led to the extermination of 4,000 dogs. And then a few years later, Louise Pasteur would develop a rabies vaccine to sort of counteract getting bit by a stray dog. And then I just want to go to one more image. This last image I want to show is a photograph by Nick Nicosia from his Real Pictures series. Nicosia is a Texas-based artist best known for elaborately staged photographs. In this series, he turns to black and white images that are meant to look like photojournalistic portrayals of suburban violence and perversion and humor. In Real Pictures 10, the viewer is looking through a windshield of a pit bull attacking the car. This is a huge work. It's over 84 inches wide. So you sort of really get the sense of the dog right in front of you. So after you look at the dog, you sort of see to the right the sort of small child and immediately feel a sense of danger. You know, it's not a coincidence that Nicosia used a pit bull mix to portray this imminent danger. Historically, this kind of dog has been seen as violent, so much so that in 1989, the city of Denver implemented a ban on several dog breeds that can be considered, quote, pit bull. And anyone who lives in an apartment, especially here in Austin, can attest to have come across these sort of breed restrictions when applying for an apartment. In a 2016 book titled Pitbull, The Battle Over an American Icon by Bronwyn Dickey, she argues that the idea of pit bulls being more violent compared to other dogs is not really substantiated in scientific fact, but rather tied to them being historically bred for dogfights, which on top of being unimaginably cruel, was also considered low class.
Yeah, Christian, and I think in this one, I'm not sure if you mentioned, but we've talked, one of the interesting things about this photo is that you're initially kind of terrified of this pit bull when you realize that you're inside the car, but then when you look to the right side, something else seems to be going on.
Right, exactly.
So the dog is protecting the child, actually.
It could be seen as protecting, or it can be seen, you might also be scared of the child.
Okay, yeah. Christian, I'm so glad that you bring this up about pit bulls, because when I adopted Ella, they told me she was half Jack Russell, half Cocker Spaniel, and I quickly realized that that could not be the case for a variety of reasons. And so I DNA tested her and found out that she was in fact mostly Beagle, but also second most pit bull. And I think had I known that before adopting her, I might not have. And as you can see, she's so ferocious. She's so ferocious. So I'm really glad that I adopted my ferocious little pit bull here. And on that, I would love to introduce Colleen Ketchum from Austin Pets Alive, which is our kind of amazing animal adoption agency and shelter here in Austin. And Colleen is the events specialist, where you can normally find Colleen cultivating relationships between the APA, Austin Pets Alive, and local businesses looking to support adoptable pets through on-site fundraising events. In the past few months, though, those in-person events have moved behind the screen as APA has gone virtual like the rest of us. In many different capacities, including the creation of the virtual fundraising activities, Colleen is working, and she's doing things like yoga, yappy hours, which I am so down for, and pet e-readings, concerts, and more. So please welcome Colleen Ketchum. Colleen, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you guys for having me. I also wanted to introduce everyone to my own pet, if I can bribe him over here. This is Buckley. He is a pug that I adopted from Pug Rescue of Austin. He's been my little buddy for, I guess, going on 6 years now. I adopted him when he was 10 months old, and now he's almost 7. So dogs have just always been a big part of my life, and working at Austin Pets Alive, cats have become an even bigger part of my life as well. I feel like I'm definitely more of a cat fan now after working there for a couple years.
Colleen, can you tell our viewers at home more about the APA's mission?
Sure. So we have been around a lot longer than I think most people might know. APA was started in the late 90s, actually as an advocacy agency, basically to help address issues in the city of Austin, because during that time, only about 15% of companion animals were making it out of the city shelter alive. So basically 85% were at risk for euthanasia at the time. And then in 2008 was when we officially rebranded as a nonprofit animal shelter. That's when we started doing our own adoptions, our own clinic work. And since then, we have really pushed heavily to change what sheltering is and what we think it can be. And we have 7 unique programs to help protect the populations of animals that we see as the most at risk for euthanasia in traditional shelter settings. And just a quick rundown, that includes neonatal kittens, puppies with parvo, large dogs with behavior quirks. We have our own medical clinic on site. We also have a program specific for barn cats. Those are less than social cats who still deserve a chance at a home. And I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh, and then yes, we have 2 other great cat programs, our Feline Leukemia Center, as well as the Maddie's Adoption Center for Cats with Ringworm. So we really focus on these animals that most people look at and think, oh, they're not suitable to go to a home, but we know that these animals will make great companions for people. So we really work hard to keep them safe and get them adopted out.
That's awesome. So I wanted to, so I was just talking about the sort of breed restrictions when it comes to pit bulls. What has Austin Pets Alive tried to do to sort of destigmatize owning a pit bull and having them get adopted? I imagine pit bulls are the breed that you see most often left in shelters.
Yeah, we do have quite a few of them. And again, as you touched on, there are still breed restrictions in Austin at a lot of apartment complexes and even some houses. Our approach is basically that every dog is an individual and they should be treated as such. What's really amazing is that we have a dedicated dog behavior staff. So these are our team members who actually work with the animals in one-on-one settings to help train them up with basic skills such as sit, stay, place, to really get them set and ready to go to a home.
I think the work you guys do is amazing, and I've been a fan of you since I moved to Austin. And can you tell the viewers at home, especially now that they're probably at home a lot more than they used to be, why adopting and fostering is so important, and whether you think right now is a good time to adopt or foster a pet?
Sure. So as I'm sure has happened with everybody, everything we did at APA kind of got turned on its head back in mid-March. We actually made a big push to get most of our animals off-site into foster homes. The reason being is that we were concerned about a lot of people being at the shelter between staff and volunteers. We normally have obviously a lot of people there to help walk dogs, take care of cats. But of course, there were definite safety and health risks that posed with that as COVID-19 was spreading in Texas. And so the great thing, especially about fostering, is that it saves not 1 life, but 2. You get 1 animal into your home temporarily until it gets adopted, and that leaves us space in the shelter to pull another animal from another at-risk situation. So it's a constant ebb and flow of getting animals from shelters where they're at risk into either our own shelter here in Austin or into a foster home. And because a lot of people have been home, we have actually gotten about 85% of our animals into foster homes. Our shelter is the emptiest that it's been in a long time, and it's really great because we get to learn a lot more about the dogs that are dogs and cats in foster. They get more personalized attention, same with the ones that are still on site at the shelter. And we've actually seen higher adoption rates during this period as well.
That's great. I know a lot of people who are fostering right now. And for the people who can't foster, how can we support Austin Pets Alive?
Yeah, so really the biggest thing is donations. Because we're a nonprofit animal shelter, we rely solely on individual donations to help run all these amazing programs and to help save all the many pets that are looking for a home. I understand obviously times are tough really right now, but of course donations are always appreciated and they help us continue our programs and save even more lives. Some of the other ways, of course, you can visit our thrift stores, which have reopened recently to limited shopping experiences. I think Chrissy is modeling some stuff that she...
Yeah, I am, as I drop my iPad. I have to say, I think that the Austin Pets Alive thrift shop is the best in all of Austin, and I love thrifting. It's like my favorite thing to do. I got this dress and this necklace well before the quarantine at your thrift shop, and I spend a lot of money there. I highly recommend it, unless you wear my size, in which case please stay out, because I want first try of everything.
Yeah, the thrift stores are one of my favorites too, and of course all the proceeds go back to support our shelter. And then again, kind of the last thing, if either adopting or fostering or even donating, if that's not something that you have the capacity for right now, just follow us online on social media. Go to, you can find us at Austin Pets Alive. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're even on LinkedIn, so you can follow us, keep up to date with all the things that are happening, and share with your friends, and hopefully other people will find some pets that they love and get them into more homes.
Thank you so much, Colleen. We're so appreciative that you were here, and we support the work you're doing, and it's just really great that you're saving this many animals. We want to take some questions. We're just at 6, but maybe we can take 1 or 2 questions. There aren't that many. So if you have a burning one for either Christian, me, or Colleen about pets, please put it in the chat now, and we will get to it in the next minute before we wrap up. But Colleen, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because I love fuzzy people, little tiny ones with tails. What is the minimum length that I could foster an animal for if that were something I were interested in doing but couldn't make a long commitment?
Yeah, so we usually ask for a minimum of 2 weeks. And of course, we would love it if you could keep the pet until they get adopted, but we understand, situations change. But 2 weeks really is the minimum that we ask for, which is not that much time and really is great because it helps the pets decompress. We get to learn about them a little bit more, how they interact in a home, say with kids or other dogs or other animals. Those are the top questions we usually get when people are looking to adopt. So those notes that we get from a foster home are truly invaluable to getting these pets adopted faster.
Thank you so much, Colleen. I think that there are probably a lot of viewers at home that could spare 2 weeks in Austin and save 2 furry little lives. So I hope we see that, and I hope that you get a lot of donations. Christian, I've got 2 people asking about the figures in the background of the Eden prints. And maybe Stacy wants to bring those up, but I know there are nude figures in the background. I'm not sure that those are any particular figures. I'd have to really get in there with a magnifying glass, and I'll tell you guys, I'll make you a deal. I'll go and do that, and I will put the answer on Instagram tonight and tag the Blanson. Christian, since we don't have a ton of questions, would you mind telling the viewers how they can support us and not just Austin Pets Alive?
Yeah, of course. Thank you again, Colleen, for joining us, of course. And that's it for tonight's conversation. Thank you, all of you, for joining us. And before I leave, I have a few reminders. Our next curated conversation will be next Tuesday, June 30th at 5 p.m. And the topic is Blanton Around the World, Tales of Traveling with Art. Featuring a live Q&A with Assistant Curator of Modern and Contemporary Arts, Claire Howard, and our Senior Registrar, Lisa Dirks, as they share their experiences escorting objects from the museum's collection and traveling exhibitions around the world. It's really interesting subject. I love when they answer questions about traveling and being couriers. To watch past curated conversations, take virtual tours, and explore other #MuseumFromHome content, go to blantonmuseum.org. Sorry. blantonmuseum.org/museumfromhome. If you'd like to show your support, you can become a member at blantonmuseum.org/membership. If you want info about upcoming programs and other big news, sign up for a newsletter at blantonmuseum.org/subscribe. And finally, if you have topics you'd love for us to cover in future curated conversations, drop us a line at media@blantonmuseum.org. Thanks again, and we hope to see you next Tuesday.
Thank you, everyone. We also have a very special song that's going to play that Colleen sent us, and it is the Austin Pets Alive song, and it's adorable, so we hope you stick around to the end. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week.
fluffy or fluffy or stuck in a tree. They make a little trouble, but we all can agree that life is better when there's many more of them. Keep them around because we all just love them. Nothing as sweet as the furry feet dancing, moving to the rhythm of a little companion. Makes us happy when the happy is a happy could be. So if your tail starts wagging just because you're lucky and you're feeling like a puppy inside, 3 big cheers for Austin Pets Alive. Well, they might be slinky or stinky or a little bit old, a little bit cranky coming in from the cold. You better believe we're gonna love and adore them, and I guarantee we got all the time for them. So come on down and throw them a bone. Go ahead, adopt a little friend of your own, because they just can't wait to turn your little house into a home. Oh yes, you'll be smitten, purring like a kitten, and you couldn't quit grinning if you tried.